a lot easier if you know, versus forming some joint powers agreement with Modoc County, because the basin, of course, is in both Modoc and Lassen. So your options are one, that we use the Lassen Modoc Flood Control District as the agency, and that would be this entire board and 3 members from the Modoc board. No? 4 from this board?
No, 4 from Modoc.
Oh, 4. Okay, excuse me.
It's the Surprise Valley, Cedarville side of Modoc County is not included.
Okay, thank you. I stand corrected. So 4 from them and all of you. You know, so obviously there's benefits if that's already in place. And 2, that we do some kind of JPA and invent the wheel again and go through that process. And then what's always kind of fun to play with is we do nothing. And we tell the state we're not doing anything, we don't play their game. And as much as that would be probably satisfying in some respects, it's really not a logical way to go about it, because with this program, as with many others through the state, when it's a mandate, if you don't play the game, you're not going to get the perks that go along with it, like grants to, you know, perfect all the different things that need to happen. So you will ultimately be the agency, even if you don't do something and decide it's the joint powers or it's the flood control district. Ultimately, you will be the agency anyway. So staff recommends option 1, which is the Lassen Modoc Flood Control District, as the agency. And I wanted to try to pigeonhole this into just this topic, because there's all kinds of peripheral things that are going to fit into this, and we're going to be before the board in the coming months with all kinds of things from the JPA, or excuse me, from CASGEM compliance, which we have a grant for, which we're modifying the grant to try to fit into the things that we need to do to get there from here now with this stuff. It's dynamic with the state. And I got to say, you know, there's good people at the state, and I don't mean to, you know, criticize them, but they have been under the gun, and, you know, they're trying to figure this out as they go as well. Because, you know, this big mandate comes down, and there's not, from our perspective, a lot of leadership at the local levels, like in Reading and Red Bluff. They seem to just be trying to figure it out. And so things like us protesting the metadata that went into the criteria that developed us into a medium priority basin, there's like no appeal process. Well, there's got to be an appeal process. So that's just an example of what we're working through. They don't, you know, they're just trying to get to the end of the year and figure those things out as they go. But it's been complicated. It's going to be complicated. I worked with the CAO and with county council. We've been meeting. We've been trying to figure these things out. And for now, this one step, I think it's pretty clear that it would benefit the board to choose the the flood control district as the agency. And as I said, we'll be coming in here in serial fashion to figure out the rest of it as we go.
Okay, Jim.
Mr. Chairman, I have 2 questions, and it may be somewhat problematic. First of all, the Lassen Modoc Flood Control District was created in 1959 by the legislature for the express purposes of developing the Allen Camp Dam project. Back then, there was a huge effort to build dams as part of the state water project. That's what brought about Oroville, Big Oroville, and Oroville Dam, and Shasta Dam, because they started those projects earlier in the 40s and 50s. Came to conclusion in the 60s. Biz Johnson was our congressman at the time. He was working extensively in Washington to get funding. Whiskey Town Dam was developed. You have Trinity River has a couple other. Keswick were constructed all during that time frame, and it was envisioned that on the Pitt River that Allen Camp Dam would be built to provide a reservoir, a water source, hydroelectric. But when you go through I've got a copy of this around, but this document that's in the back, which is the actual act itself, and nowhere do you find anywhere in this particular act groundwater. And back in those days, groundwater was not That's why we didn't, until here this last summer, we had groundwater legislation for the first time involved in California, because California historically has had a hands-off approach. I mean, the purpose of the Lassen MoDOT flood control district was dealing with the flooding of surface water, the rivers, and the like, and to try to manage it to generate hydroelectric recreation and those likes. And so to use this as a vehicle is actually a significant alteration of what the vehicle was. And I don't know if it would require extra legislation to empower them, or we can achieve it by entering into a joint powers arrangement with MoDOT County, with the blessing of DWR or whoever, and co-opt this body in terms of the lay of the land. There's fees that are paid by some of the landowners in the area that deal with specifically, they actually do stuff. I mean, it's not a whole lot, maybe in a lot of people's eyes. It's in our budget. Once a year we have to approve that budget, and the fees that are collected primarily from the people that interact with the pit river. Aaron probably can tell you more directly who they are and how much they pay. But I mean, it's not like huge sums of money, but yet the vehicle is designed for that purpose. I find it interesting that when we define county on page 3 of the Act, it says county is the county of Lassen, and they completely just blank out MoDOT County as being the partner. I mean, the composition of that is look at the Pit River drainage, so it's the part of Lassen County that's in the Central Valley Water Resources Control Board, Regional Board jurisdiction, at least in the north end. So if it drains into the Pit River, which eventually makes its way into the Sacramento River and is part of the Central Valley Water Project, then you're part of this area, and that's why they excluded the Cedarville side of it. And at that time, I'm not sure how they reapportioned their districts, but my impression is pretty much everything on the Cedarville side has one supervisor, and the other 4 divided from the rest of MoDOT County, and that's all delineated in here for that reason. We have to adopt the budget. We have to have a quorum at a minimum, and it requires all 5 of us to be present unless somebody from MoDOT County shows up and participates in the Budget Act, and that'll be coming up here in a few weeks, and we'll get our annual visit from somebody from MoDOT County for this particular body. If we are going to proceed with this here, I think it would behoove us to meet with our counterparts, and it would behoove us to meet with the stakeholders who currently are engaged to make sure that they feel comfortable having this vehicle being utilized in this fashion.
Well, I would say thank you for your comments. Obviously, if the board chooses the district, it's eyes wide open going in that this is a departure from what this group has done. And I recognize and I emphasize that this is a big deal. Whoever this, obviously it's going to be you fighting this group, but this legislation gives a lot of power, from fines to fees to investigation. Just it's a big deal. So eyes wide open, obviously. Now, from MoDOC, we have talked to Cam Hunter, the planning director. I don't know if she's an interim, what the deal is there, but and she was very interested to know what the board thought at this meeting. And so I'm going to be calling her afterwards. And we did contemplate, both agencies getting together and having a further discussion. This is really trying to gather what you thought of the 3 options. And obviously you want to know what they think. And this is the first step towards that effort.
Well, the legislature created the Long Valley Groundwater Management District, the Honey Lake Valley. I mean, we've got the Surprise Valley, because of the Nevada threat and looking at grabbing water. Back, it was Senator Doolittle back there in the late 1980s and through the 90s, and I think the last one was done by Senator Cox, and he was still alive and in office around 2000. In terms of establishing those, so there's been precedent set for how we create these groundwater basins, and if this body is to be done that way, then I think we probably should look at some point getting maybe Brian Dolly and Senator Gaines to get this law amended to incorporate specifically groundwater authority for an entity like this Lassen MoDOT flood control. I think it would be a relatively simple process for them to do that, because these guys specifically they kept that away from them, because back then groundwater was not something that people were interested in managing. I know that Brian is really big on trying to get surface. He's very good at letting the governor know that we need more dams and more reservoirs, and the problem with our water shortage is we send everything out to the Pacific Ocean because we have to protect the fish or whatever it is that we're doing. And it may be that with some of those bond monies, maybe this would be an opportunity to reactivate and revitalize the Allen Camp Dam project, as it's all on paper, and the reason why it hasn't been built because they never could get the funding. Actually, Congress actually approved it, so it has authorization. It just doesn't have an appropriation. But that doesn't mean that the appropriation necessarily has to come from the feds. You know, the state could easily appropriate the dollars.
Okay, Richard.
Forgive me if Mr. Anderson covered this while he stepped out of the room, but one of the first things we did was consult with special counsel regarding the formation of the flood control district to find out if this was an agency that could be utilized to deal with the groundwater issue. The conclusion from that was that yes, it is formed in such a fashion. I wasn't around in 1942 when this was adopted.
I did cover that, but it's worth repeating. And
it does contemplate subterranean water.
That's on page 3.
And then if you go to page 5, it says, page 23 at the bottom of page 5, let's talk about in the last paragraph on number 4. It talks about the augmented supply of water and natural underground reservoirs. So it does talk about underground water to an extent.
Indirectly.
No question, it's a departure from the purpose
From the initial purpose.
Correct. No question.
Well, I'm not adverse to us co-opting. I just want to make sure that we do it legitimately.
I would just say to open this up and to get it totally revamped and really off course and not almost
and I was remiss, I should have mentioned that we did have some discussion with Mr. Alba, and one of the preference points for this option would be that you've got people that are familiar with it on the advisory group, and so there's kind of a local feel to it, and so that was one of the motivations for recommending this group.
I specifically recall, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I specifically recall the meeting that we had and the discussion, at least in terms of what precipitated the asking for the opinion as to why or whether or not the Lassen MoDOT Flood Control District could perform this function was because it was an existing entity already. And the difficulty that we sometimes see in finding good people to serve, if we constitute a new entity, as whether it's a special district or a groundwater management district, when we already have an entity in existence that might be able to embrace that within the powers it already has. And that really, I think, was kind of the hinge point, was create something new if you've got something that you could use. But again, that's not our choice, that's your choice.
Last time we did that was looking for taking the freedom of decree away from DWR. We thought the RCD was already there. It would be so good.
That was what I was thinking in the back of my mind as I was listening to this.
Okay.
I'm with Aaron. I don't know if you want to screw up a perfectly functioning.
Well, does that give enough direction, you guys?
If it's the board's pleasure, then I think we would start coordination with MoDOT so that we could have a joint meeting.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll let you want to see Aaron come.
Well, yes and no. This is a bad deal, guys, because you're going to be asking the 5 board members up there to go out and assess their neighbors and their friends.
That's the
They're
one.
they're not going to want to do that, so that's going to fall back on us. And we're not going to want to do that. ranks, and then we go back to state. I mean, this is like playing Russian roulette, and then you got a 22, you got a 40 caliber, and a 357.
Why do you say they're not gonna wanna do it? Maybe we should ask them.
Well, I know people are on the board, and,
Well, I understand.
it's just like you, I mean, you don't wanna go and set, you don't wanna set your neighbors and tell them they can't pump anymore because their well's going down.
Well, the alternative is then the state of California to it.
Well, but what I'm saying is that I think we really need to focus and hammer on this data component, the ranking value table.
Well, we are, and
Yeah,
frankly, we are.
And I
We're
think
due.
we can go ahead and subliminally work on
Right.
this thing, so I mean, we're having our meetings, we're acting like we're trying to, I mean, just hammer these guys on this, because they're the ones that put us into this, and they're not the ones that are giving us an appeal process. They're the ones holding us up, because this is our number one, first and foremost, is to get out of this ranking.
But you know, technically, the ranking is 13.42 and low ranking is 5.75 to 13.42. So technically, they fall into the
On the
lower
hundredths
ranking.
of a point off.
No, we're 13.5.
Yes.
Valley's 13.5. So
Well,
we're just
yeah, but if you look at the real ranking down here, down there,
down here.
correct.
Yeah, but see, they got us at 13.5.
Over there, but they rounded it off. Your real ranking for up there is 13.42, which falls under low ranking.
I think you're looking at the breakout between the categories. We were ranked at 13.5, and the
Right, that's the adjusted ranking. The ranking range is actually 13.42. You know, in the first column. Then they rounded off to 13.5.
Let me just say this. It's very close, okay? And to answer Supervisor Alba's, or it wasn't a question, a comment, we're full throttle. Council, Richard, myself, we get it. We're fighting it. But we don't want to get behind the curve if they...
You need to do both.
Yeah, we got to do both. I really recommend we do both.
And I don't think
And you will be the entity regardless of what you do or don't do.
You know, and as I was going through this, you know, reading the calendar bulletin 118, you know, I see all this stuff on here, like they, on page number 9, the water quality and public well supplies. Well, they said they sampled 9, did they sample 9 wells for nitrates? I don't think there's 9 public wells in Big Valley.
Well, it was, you know, just as an example of the runaround in the bureaucracy is we requested, our county council has requested where all the data came from. And the reason he had to do it is because staff was getting, well, you go here and you look at this. Well, no, we want it from this agency that says this is the case, not refers to a different agency.
Right, you know,
And,
when you go to page 10, it has basin management, you have the groundwater management, they have Modoc County adopting them, but they don't have Lassen County.
These are all things that we are motivated to expose and explore and to hopefully get the basin reduced to a low priority. But as I said, we just can't get behind. In the case that we do have to move forward, we don't want to be behind.
And on, I mean, how do you go, on these graphs here, how do you go find one of these on, because I tried finding it last night.
Page on,
Huh?
video on what
Oh, page 60. They got the different monitoring wells with photographs.
One of them is yours, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I can find it.
I hope you can find yours.
I couldn't.
You can't find your own?
No, I looked all through that thing and I couldn't find it. I tried typing in the number and et cetera, anyway, I couldn't find it. Because I know that one there is, that's one of the better ones, that's why they don't have a little hydrograph on here. So anyway, I mean, I just think that there's a lot of problems and a lot of faults, and I think that we can, I think we can almost stick to our guns and come out ahead of this and get out of it for this year. Next year, they might come back and buy this, but, I mean, we can, as long as we're moving forward and like we're having this meeting today and talking about it today, you know, okay, we're gonna go talk with the flood control. I mean, as long as we're engaged in the process, we're just not standing there not doing anything, I don't see how they can come back and hammer us too much.
We believe, like you, that the data is significantly flawed and that they base the determination on. And I'm not as optimistic, I guess, that we're going to be able to change the ranking because there is no process in place for changing it. So we're not as optimistic that it can be changed by December of this year. And so that's why we're recommending the two-pronged approach.
And from, yeah, no,
If we go on and look in your staff report more, I mean, that was another thing I have, is on page 3, you know, you're talking about your actions, we have 1, 2, 3, and you have important deadlines. You say we have until the 17th, no, we got till 31st. Because you talk about the June 17th with the reassessment of the basins. and then
Yeah,
you
in
talk about
June
GSA,
of 17, they're probably gonna add basins. I don't.
Right, but also the GSAs have to be established.
Right.
And then in January by 2020, the GSPs have to be established.
Mhm.
Now, hasn't that been changed with the governor declared drought? No, we used to have until the 31st, don't we, of December?
I don't believe these dates have been changed, but
We have another limitation that's imposed on us for December of this year, and it escapes me currently, but it is a CAD gym limitation of some sort.
a different program, perhaps.
Yes.
Okay, I thought we had that all this done.
And the purpose of, I was trying to like leave CASGIM here and other water-related items and just try to focus on this, but you may be correct that there's something to do with CASGIM that's been accelerated.
but I think another thing we gotta,
And that makes you, and so I think what you're talking about is having the CASGIM compliant wells identified by the end of the year.
Thank you.
and I think another thing we need to keep on the horizon is a new ranking could actually put Big Valley farther, and it could turn out worse. We're only talking about a couple of tenths, actually, you know, 800. I mean, a new ranking could go the other way. It could actually be down in 12.5.
And I'm not trying to be obstinate. I agree with everything you're saying.
And the other thing I want to bring up is,
I'm trying to.
where was Lassen County or Honey Lake Valley in this? Does anybody remember the ranking?
We're low, but
But we
we'll
were,
see where we are in
That
17.
too could change.
That too could change in
We thought,
17.
if we recall, that number was approximately 10 or 11, somewhere in that vicinity.
I guess
And just-
my point is, the new ranking they come out in 2 years or whatever, it could kick Honey Lake.
Very well could.
It could, because what my understanding is too is the ranking will not be the same as this last go around, and in fact will include other factors. And, you know,
To be determined.
Right.
But anyhow, let's, I think we need to, you got enough information for this stuff? I mean,
My sense is to coordinate with MODOC and further the discussion.
Perhaps call a meeting of that body.
Yep. The joint.
It is,
Okay.
meeting of that body.
It might be good to incorporate their participation.
right. I think that's the next step, the contact.
And like I said, I've been working with the planning director, and she expects that this is where this meeting would
But
be.
I'm back with Aaron, though, if we've got that group that we appoint that sets the rate, and they basically administer within that zone for Lassen.
Yeah, I mean-
Control. And it comes down to these guys, especially the state, they're, you know, we're talking about monies and fees at some point in time. It's gonna happen in all these groundwater basins that they're setting out here, looking for the dollars, and you're absolutely right. They're not gonna wanna sell money to accommodate some state mandate, and it's gonna fall back on the boards. And the question comes down to, is this the appropriate entity? I mean, it could be like another RCD thing with the water master, or it could be in terms of creating issues, taking
With
out.
what they do in the boundaries, I mean, this is by far and away I mean, it's already said, it's already placed, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. But whether they're actually gonna wanna accept this responsibility, I mean,
I understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
the alternative is not, is work.
And remember too, I want to make sure that we're all understanding, there's the advisory group to the flood control district, and I kind of hear we're mixing that with you guys. Because essentially, you will be the agency. Now, whether you want to, relegate your authority to
So
other.
since 1959, we've kind of delegated to them the operational function of this law.
Understood.
And so by doing what you're proposing to do, taking them over, is going to create a dynamic where that kind of delegation and them functioning in that limited environment they've been functioning in for 60 years, I mean, they're pretty happy about it probably. Now all of a
Understood.
sudden it's going to change.
Gotcha. I mean, it's basically, we're gonna throw a big rock in the pond and then there's gonna be a wake.
I think for today you guys got enough direction.
Yeah. Okay.
And come back and meet again on this issue.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's move to our last, HA.
Okay, I'm happy to report that we have reached 10 agreements with 3 of our bargaining units, and you have memorandums of understanding in your packet that would memorialize the tentative agreements we've had and provide for the implementation of some salary and benefit increases to 3 of our bargaining units. And I'm going to go through just a couple of non-substantive changes. So we've got Management and Professional Association, UPEC, which is the largest employee group in the county, and the Road Workers Association. The terms of those salary increases are in those draft MOUs, but I will summarize by saying they're all almost identical. They're 3-year agreements. They include salary increases for immediately to be implemented of 2.5%. In 1 year, another 2%. In the 3rd year of the contract, 3%. They include increase in the flexible benefits, which can be used for health care, $100 immediately, another $100 in year 2. The only change between bargaining units is the UPEC. Rather than $100 going towards flex in year 2, $100 would go directly towards medical benefits used, and that's in an effort to try to bring together the benefits between bargaining units. There are 2 changes that I would like to identify, even though they're non-substantive, but they're different from what you have in your packet, and they are only pertaining to the UPEC MOU. Article 1.07F, the agreement date that will be added would be July 5th, 2015, and that would mean that the salaries and benefit changes would begin on the pay period of July 5th, which was obviously last week, right, or a week before. The next change would be in Article 4.03, page 9 of the same MOU, and that would just add the reference to the manual adopted by the Board of Supervisors on November 26, 2013, and that's in reference to the probation department discipline policy that was adopted by this board. And it's just a clarification that that's the document that's
That
being
last
referred
half
to.
of the sentence got left off. Because it just, the sentence, reading along, all of it just stops
Right.
at no period or anything, so obviously it got missed.
So I'm happy to entertain any questions regarding those MOUs. The MOUs have been signed by the respective bargaining units, and they're awaiting this board's approval.
How many employees do all 3 of these represent?
It's well over half of the county employees. I don't have a number. The UPEC represents, I think, almost half of the employees. That's about 183 at the moment. So this will be more than 1/2 of the county employees.
Good. Any more questions for Richard? If not, I will entertain a motion to pass these 3.
I will make that motion.
Second. Any more discussion, any questions before you vote? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Ayes have it. Okay, that's done. Thank you, guys. Information to the Board of Supervisors from Richard.
Back on the note of the negotiations, I would just like to, I know the board's aware of it, I just like to mention that the efforts put forth in these bargaining units negotiating was refreshing and was well received, and I was glad that we were able to conclude the negotiations in such quick order, and I appreciate the employees and their representatives to that. And also look forward to seeing everyone at the fair this week. Be down there, and as I know, all of you.
You adjourn.
Actually,